it seems to be an argument on the left a little bit that if you just sort of made people wealthier, and it's ironic that this is a lefty argument, because it's a pro-capitalist argument. It's saying that these people, because I think you were suggesting that people who have come over from maybe poorer backgrounds, so if we were to find a way to make everybody wealthier, would it make them less extreme?
So this is the argument from mostly the liberal side rather than the left-wing side, and especially the new liberal side. I tend to generally agree, but it depends where you're doing it. So the idea is, if you support fair and free trade deals and just concept of trade, you actually help build those countries that, I know we're not supposed to say, but they're third world, and countries will come up. The second option is the left-wing approach, which is, well, if someone is basically from the third world and they're struggling, then just open the door, bring him here. And then when they're here, the liberal side would say, now let's make them prosperous and educated here. Like, okay, no. Common sense. Firstly, if you help people in their own countries, not with foreign aid thrown money at it, no, just, with that just sort of like what the British Empire did, relatively speaking, but in a more modern way and more civilized way, helping them to be able to trade and actually remove restrictions. For example, the European Union have these restrictions on coffee beans from Africa. So Africa produces all these coffee beans. You could get them, fine. But if Africa uses the coffee beans to make coffee themselves and then sell it to Europe, then the European Union says, no, we're not going to buy it from you. You would get the coffee beans from you cheap. We're going to give it to European manufacturers. They'll do it. So it's these tiny things that matter. So obviously, then African manufacturers, then they're not going to be able to be prosperous. And this is something that is built, it's made there. It's just one example. If you actually help those countries to be better, and again, not by throwing money, then they won't have to come here. Because if a few people who are actually actual talent, you're draining the talent from, for example, countries like Iran, because of everything's happened over the last 40, 50 years, different type of people leave the country. And that also includes the talent. And I'm not saying it in a left-wing way, all migrants are scientists and doctors. But by default, same thing happened with many countries, including China. The talent would leave because they don't want authoritarian regimes. So not only you want the talent to stay there, obviously actually it's in the interest of the globalist governments to say, no, let's bring the talent here. But the problem with the rest of the left-wing side is, let's just bring everybody. Everybody is a doctor, everybody is a scientist. That's not how it works. So if you actually help those countries build in their own place, then you won't even have the wave of migration. So what is it our job to use our tax money to educate people here? We have our own people and our own problems. Let's just focus on our people first. Anybody who's born here now, and start from there.
Oh man, but it's not going to happen. And I think there's not a will for it to happen, because nobody seems to admit that anything's going wrong. I mean, if we had and some people say it's much higher than what the census is saying, but if we had 10% of this population who were Scientologists or Hasidic Jews or Jehovah's Witnesses, this would be on the front page of the paper every day, every newspaper. Like, hang on, what are we going to do to stop this religious group from changing the way we live our lives? With Islam, this is different. Why won't celebrities, why won't Rory Stewart and Alistair Campbell and Emily Maitlis, why aren't they they should be screaming this from the hilltops. Why aren't they touching it?
This is the thing. So when I criticize about Islam's ideology and how the effect in the West, some people, for example, on the left would say, "Oh, your problem is just with Islam, but what about the Jews?" And I'm like, well, if we also had a few million Hasidic Jews, like ultra-Orthodox, very specific type, very religious, also basically demographic changing in favor of them, and then they start basically making rules, I'm going to have a problem with that too.
Yeah.
If a bunch of gingers from Wales try to basically take over, I will have a problem with that too. But we're not having that problem. And most modern Jews, and people say Jews, they're not just religious and ethnicity. So like people could be Jewish, but they're not actually religious,
like me.
Okay, yeah, exactly. You guys exist, and,
no, but not for long.
Yeah, I mean the way things are going.
Yeah.
But the thing about the nature of the Islamic tribe is that it came out of nowhere, in the sense that it came from a corner of the world where nobody was even going there, what we now call Saudi Arabia, and nobody was trading there. So it was in their interest, some of them, to say, we're going to have to make ourselves organized. Look at next door. Like, we got all these, like the Roman Empire, we got the Christianity, we got even the Jews, the Israelites, they all become, why are they organized? Oh, so they have a set of rules. So we have to do the same. So they did that. But the problem with that was that obviously because they came late, then there were some people who were more ambitious they created this idea, well, we have to expand. And what we call this was the original idea of the original version of the one world government, but this time under the flag of Islam. And the first wave of expansion, unlike the early days Christianity, which was just by preaching and actually being persecuted, the messengers, they were obviously the apostles and everybody else. The first option for the Islamic tribe was to conquer, because they did actually try to talk to people, other people, saying, do you want to convert? They didn't. They sent a letter to the king of the Persian Empire. He tore it apart. 10 minutes later, they conquered Persia. So that was the first option. But since then, obviously, there's been a lot of wars. The Islamic Empire obviously grew for a little while and it came back. Since then, Christianity has been, Christian culture and Christian tribes and systems have been on the rise. And that meant the Islamic tribe, the mentality psychologically, became more about, we're not winning. So victimhood was created. Victimhood mentality, which also is linked to other ideologies like Marxism. You want to win, but if you're not winning, you start to attack. If you lose, play the victim card. And by the way, it's not on purpose. It's not like planned. Some people think, for example, even
Muslim Brotherhood.
They're like, they do not know. It's psychological. Like, and it's automatic. It's autopilot. Like right now, Hamas people in Gaza, we're winning. They're going around with their uniforms because there's ceasefire. The moment ceasefire fully ends, they're going to cry again. It's not planned. It's just autopilot. It's generational. It's in their genetics.
It's human.
Exactly. So, because of, to answer your question about the demographics and everything else, by default, the Islamic tribes psychologically have been told for centuries and centuries that you are the outsider, everybody else, but you are superior. But they're not listening to all these infidels. So now you go, make your life better, try to basically change them. You shouldn't change. You shouldn't integrate when you go to Germany. It's all subconscious. It's not like someone tells them before they go on the plane or on a boat.
Yeah.
And that's
a minority of 2 billion people. I mean, it's extraordinary.
Yeah.
I was often told as a child, you're Jewish, there aren't very many of us in the world, and all of those, be careful, that kind of thing. It's 15 million in the world or something, Jews. There's hardly any in this country. There's a couple 100,000. I can't imagine being in the mind of particularly an extreme Muslim who's saying, gosh, everyone's against us, we're a minority, and you're 2 billion strong, 50 odd countries, some of them extremely wealthy countries. It's incredible that they're able to feel like victims.
And it's fascinating because so there are, for example, more extreme movements in like nationalist movements in Europe, primarily, not here, but they do exist in Poland, in Germany, in Italy. And even those groups, whatever you want to call them, far right or just ultra nationalist, it's interesting that these sort of groups throughout decades and centuries in every nation, when they see a threat, again, rationally or irrationally, they see a group of people changing them, they always do lash out. And they did it against the Jews in the 30s, right? Mm-hmm. We still haven't really seen, despite what our Prime Minister says, the far right is on the rise, we still haven't really seen any sort of organized level of hatred physically, even in Europe, against basically anybody who's Muslim. And so that's, by the way, that's a good thing. Imagine if we already had random people like skinheads in Germany were going around beating up random people who just because they're brown.
Well, this is why I said to Katie Hopkins, you can't be asking for a final solution of Islam, although she denies that's what she meant. But I'm not having that because she's pretty smart.
Yeah, it's tricky. But the issue is when the establishment are going around saying Islamophobia is on the rise, we need more laws in favor of it. The more you acknowledge it, the more you're actually then telling even random people who are just Muslim, whether they're born here or they're coming here, they're gonna feel more even on the defensive. So you are gonna cause more clashes. You're gonna cause more division.
Yeah.
When you are basically telling, firstly, the white middle class people that Islamophobia is on the rise. Whose fault is it? It's the white working classes, right? So they're gonna hate everybody else. Then the Islamics are also being told, yes, everybody hates you now. So what's the solution?
There was that experiment, wasn't there, when they put they pretended they put scars on people's faces. Do you know that one? There was 100 people, and they said, we've done makeup, we put a scar on your face, you're going for an interview now, and they actually removed the scar last minute before they went into the interview, but they didn't know. So the people went in, and pretty much all of them came out reporting that the interviewer had been against them and been biased against them and prejudiced, probably because of their scar.
Brilliant.
And they were then told, no, you didn't have the scar in the interview.
Yeah.
So I think that's what you're saying.
Yeah. I mean, the whole point is, it goes back to why is it that the again, we're stereotyping, but the Islamic tribe in the West, especially in certain counties, they're becoming majority in certain towns and cities. Why they still seen as victims is because, unlike, I mean, for example, even the National Socialists in Germany, when they became on the rise, or the Italian fascist movement, when they actually got the establishment, they took control. They seemed like, hey, we are now in charge. Whereas, and we've had it with many other movements, even the ancient, the so-called Greek side, but it had the different sides, obviously, when they were fighting against the Persian Empire. And the whole movie about 300, which, by the way, is extremely inaccurate. There was not 300 of them. There was like 300,000 because the rest of them ran away from the Persians. So basically the Persian side is like the evil side in that movie. Wow. And the Greeks are like underdogs. Sure. But we've had basically minority movements become majority movements, and they show strength. But the Islamic tribe, psychologically speaking, especially when they come to the West, they are presented in a way that, even the way the appearance, the clothing and everything else, and they won't be able to speak the language at first. So there are a lot of people in the West who do self-guilt and self-hatred. They do this kind of patronizing, oh, you little poor person. It's also extremely rude and insulting even to them, right? But that's why those guys, the Gary Lineker types, if I complain about saying these people, not every single person, but like, for example, you got the Islamic people who are becoming local councillors or MPs, and they are literally standing on a platform of changing Britain, saying we're doing it for Gaza. The Gary Lineker types, they're just looking at him, it's like the way that person with the beard, like an old man, like with the clothing, like, oh, but look at him, he's so innocent. They said the exact same thing about Ayatollah Khomeini when he was in exile in Paris in the 1970s from Iran. They were saying, oh, look at this nice old man. There were also then the CIA and all these guys decided to help him because they thought, because their fear was, well, the Shah is going down. The fear was the Soviet Union is going to take over Iran. Let's use this old man. He seems nice. We could definitely control him. And then people in the world could basically accept him as the alternative. Because look at him. It's just very like, it's like a Gandhi character. Like, how many times do you have to fall for the same trap?
They seem to over and over. And it's really annoying because I think they're still fighting yesterday's war in the sense of the Nazis. They are still looking for people who are racist and everywhere. That doesn't seem to be what's happening now because people seem to psychologically go for whatever makes them popular, whatever's fashionable. Well, if you're a racist today, you're certainly not popular and fashionable and cool. So you just don't. I think that's part of why we don't have many racists today. Do you know what I mean?
You say it perfect. So they are fighting the previous format. So until basically the 40s, anybody that was basically the rival or the enemy of our way of life, they were confident and strong. So back in the day for England, it was Napoleon and the French, all like, oh, they're so strong. Okay, they are calling themselves the enemy basically, like a Bond villain. Hitler was the same, Mussolini was the same, and everything else. And relatively, just basically after the 50s, for a couple of decades, the Soviet Union. Then obviously 80s, 90s, well, 70s, 80s, it went down.
Yeah.
Since then, it's changed. Even Marxism, they don't tend to, so you mentioned, for example, actual racists. Even Marxists, they don't really tend to present themselves as revolutionary, angry, strong types. We actually invited them into the tent. So the Western establishments think that we kind of eliminated Marxism because we tamed them. How did you tame them? We brought them into the tent, democratic tent. That's nice. What happened? Oh yeah, we now call them social democrats or socialists. But so what's the difference? Well, they still have the same views, but the implementation is different now. They don't want to do a bloody revolution. They do it through democracy. We're like, okay, but that's good. Good start. But they still have the same policy ideas, control and, using big government and high taxes and take your land. Like, yeah, so you didn't actually eliminate it. So the same problem we have, for example, with all the other existing threats that we currently face. So right now, the Islamists, especially the political ideology of it, they don't tend to show themselves as like Hitler did, like nice, like in a strong uniform. Oh, I just took a shower, look at me, I'm so like... well presented, or like Napoleon, like, look at me, I'm so strong, be scared of me.
Me and you.
Yeah, basically, yeah. We're more of an enemy, but back in the day. So now we don't have that. Yeah. You had bin Laden, like, sitting in a cave, watching porn videos.
Was he doing that?
Yeah, he had pictures of Condoleezza Rice. It was really weird. Wow. So it's changed.